Welcome back to Asteroid Day Live 2021. I'm Lisa Burke. And if you're just joining us, we've already heard from world experts about how we find and track asteroids and how we scientifically investigate them. But there's plenty more to come. And right now, we're going to dive into the inspiring field of planetary defense. Not all asteroids live inside the asteroid belt. ESA's Near-Earth Object Coordination Center lists more than 25,000 that are classified as near-Earth objects, NEOs. And judging from the craters that we see on the Earth from orbit, collisions with our planet have been known in the past, and they will undoubtedly occur in the future, if we let them. This year, NASA launches the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DART mission, which will be our first mission dedicated to the deflection of an asteroid, as a test for when we need to do it for real. A few years from now, ESA will launch the Hera spacecraft to survey the consequences of the DART impact. We're going to hear from experts from both missions about how NASA and ESA are turning the science fiction concept of asteroid deflection into science fact. But first, we're joined by Alan Fitzsimmons, a planetary scientist from Queen's University Belfast, who's going to tell us how many asteroids we need to find in order to feel safe.
So a question we can ask ourselves is, how many near-Earth asteroids do we have to find to feel safe? And the obvious answer is 100%. Let's find them all. But for practical reasons, that's not really a good goal to set. The first reason is that asteroids, or near-Earth asteroids, have a variety of orbits about the Sun. And just naturally, some of them will have orbits that make them difficult to find from Earth. So, for example, when they're closest to the Earth and brightest in the sky, they might be very close to the Sun, and that makes them very difficult, if not impossible, to detect with our ground-based telescopes. Or when they actually are visible from those telescopes, they're actually against the Milky Way, our galaxy as projected in the sky, where we've got 100,000 million stars, 100,000 million points of light, and we're trying to find that extra point of light, which is the asteroid, that near-Earth asteroid. So trying to get 100% of all near-Earth asteroids is very difficult. And we normally try to set ourselves a more achievable goal of detecting at least 90% of those near-Earth asteroids, because if we find 90%, and we can show that none of them are going to hit us in the next 100 or 200 years, then we know that we've only got really 10% of that risk left. And indeed, that's what's happened with the biggest asteroids. When this field really got going a couple of decades ago, the goal was to try to find 90% of all near-Earth asteroids that are 1 kilometer across or larger, because asteroids that large, if they hit us, could cause global consequences. And the goal has been achieved. It's a good news story. In fact, over 95% of those largest near-Earth asteroids we know have been found, and we know they're not going to hit us in the next 100 or 200 years. But if we go down in size, then Mother Nature, of course, is very good at making small objects compared to big objects. And as we go down in size of near-Earth asteroids, we have many more near-Earth asteroids. And because they're smaller, they reflect less light and they're more difficult to find with our telescopes. And so if we look at near-Earth asteroids perhaps 200 meters across, an object that, if it entered our atmosphere, will definitely make it to the ground, cause a crater, in fact, possibly devastation over the size of, or an area of a small country, then we've only found roughly half of those that exist so far. And we really do need to continue the efforts of discovering and tracking these objects to make sure we are safe from those objects over the next century or so. If we continue going down in size, however, of course, there are even more near-Earth asteroids. And if we consider asteroids 50 meters across, the same kind of size that it created Meteor Crater in Arizona, a crater a mile across, 49,000 years ago, or even more recently, the Tunguska impact in 1908 over Siberia. Those 50-meter objects are inherently dim. They don't reflect much sunlight because they're so small. And in fact, we've only found 5 or 6% of them so far. So while there's a good news story, and we can actually feel safe that the world will not end as far as we know by the impact of a large asteroid over the next 100 or 200 years, the smaller objects, which could still cause a lot of devastation on the surface of the Earth, are still out there unknown, and that's why the surveys and the tracking of these objects needs to continue.
To connect is to share stories, share experiences, and to deliver amazing experiences everywhere on Earth. We do the extraordinary in space. We own and operate the first and only multi-orbit fleet of satellites, seamlessly integrated with intelligent terrestrial networks to reach 99% of the world's population. Our team continuously monitors and manages your video and data networks, your services, to connect more people, more businesses, and more missions with the world's most valuable content, with high-performance data, and with cloud-enabled applications. We listen, engage, and execute so you can achieve exactly what you need from your satellite-enabled solution. From planning and implementation services to ongoing maintenance, training, and consulting, the SES way of working guarantees your end users an exceptional experience wherever they are. Shared experiences, shared stories with infinite opportunities, made possible by connection. Take your story anywhere with SES.
Well, asteroids and meteorites hit the Earth more frequently than you would imagine, particularly the smaller asteroids and meteorites, because they're far more plentiful, there's far more of them, and they occur much, much more frequently. And they happen almost every day. But most of the time they're unwitnessed. We don't see them because they're very, very small, and they just land like bits of rock in your garden, and then they're unnoticed. When they get slightly larger, so between sort of 2 to 4 meters in diameter, then they create fireballs, which can be witnessed, and a number of them have been witnessed over the last few years. Certainly since 2006, over the last sort of 15 years, there have been 9 significant impact events. But as I say, they've been from the much, much smaller asteroids. So yeah, the smaller the object, they're much, much, much more frequent. When they become slightly larger, so for example, in 2013, in February 2013, the Chelyabinsk meteorite struck, and that caused quite a significant amount of damage. And again, but it's a smaller object. So that was about sort of less than 10 meters in diameter. And again, those types of incidents don't occur very, very often, possibly once every sort of 10, 20 years or so. But it did cause injury to 1,500 people. They sustained injuries, and about 700 buildings were damaged as a result of that. Then the larger objects, so for example, the impact event at Tunguska, that happens sort of once every sort of 5 to 10,000 years. And then right at the extreme end of the spectrum is the sort of the Yucatan Peninsula, the Chicxulub event, which created a crater that was 200 kilometers wide. That happens that happened 66 million years ago. So mercifully, they don't happen very often. But one of the things that they have been able to detect is they found the majority of the population of the larger asteroids. And fortunately, none of them have been discovered to be on a collision course with the Earth. So the main risk is from the smaller objects, which are harder to detect, and of course there's much more of them. So the population is huge, and they still haven't quite determined how large that population of the smaller objects. So of course they're going to be much more frequent.
The discovery of asteroid Apophis in December 2004 caused headlines around the world. Initial orbital calculations showed a 2.7% chance that the asteroid would hit Earth on April 13, 2029. At a diameter of 370 meters, or about 1,200 feet, an asteroid the size of Apophis is estimated to impact Earth about once every 80,000 years. An impact of this size would release 1,200 megatons of energy, which is far less than the dinosaur-killing Chicxulub impact, which released around 100 million megatons of energy. Still, that's enough to cause widespread destruction up to several hundreds of kilometers from the impact site. Astronomers rushed to provide more observations to get a better understanding of Apophis's orbit and refine its chances of impact. Thankfully, further data show that there is no danger of collision in 2029. Radar observations of Apophis during its flyby in March 2021 ruled out an impact for at least the next 100 years. Apophis's 2029 pass will come closer to Earth than any asteroid of its size in living memory. It will come as close as 30,600 kilometers, or 19,000 miles above the Earth. That's closer than our geostationary satellites. During its cruise by our planet in 2029, Apophis will be visible from Europe, Africa, and Western Asia. It will look like a somewhat bright star with a magnitude of about 3.1, moving rapidly across the sky. While we can relax about an imminent impact, Apophis remains an asteroid that we should monitor closely, just in case it ever heads our way.
How can we stop an asteroid from hitting the Earth? Well, when I was young, I would play the video game Asteroids, and we would literally blow them into space dust with my little vector spacecraft. But in real life, asteroids are a little more robust than that. And it turns out that it's much better to try and change the course of an asteroid than to destroy it entirely. Because if you think about it, if you blow something up, the debris will keep going along that same orbit, and eventually some of it could in fact hit the Earth. And there's at least three main candidates for this. So the first idea, one that's actually going to get tested, is the kinetic impactor. That's going to happen on the double asteroid redirect test. And this basically uses Newton's laws of motion, the conservation of momentum. We take one object, like a spacecraft moving very quickly, and slam it into the asteroid at very high speed. And what that does is it very slightly changes the orbit of the object. In the case of something like the double asteroid redirect test, where we're hitting a small moon called Didymoon, the change is going to be measured in millimeters per second, but that's enough over time to change the orbit by thousands of kilometers over time. Now, the great thing about this is it's technology that we understand. We know how to navigate spacecraft. We know how to target these things. And so we know how to make this collision happen. The question is, how will the asteroid react? Will the asteroid get disrupted in some way? Well, that may be a problem. Or it might be that the spacecraft just doesn't move fast enough. So let's take a look at other alternatives. If you want to be more gentle, you might want to, say, apply a small force to it over time. And you might think maybe we could mount a rocket engine on the asteroid and have it push the asteroid over time. Now, That's actually something we see in a video game called Mass Effect, where they have an asteroid with rocket engines on it being used to change its orbit. But in real life, it's actually much easier to not have to touch the asteroid because asteroids rotate. And if you're going to have to figure out how to land on an asteroid and lock onto it and apply that force, that's adding complexity that you don't need. Because when you have a spacecraft floating near an asteroid, it's going to feel the force of gravity on that asteroid. But Newton's laws said the asteroid is also feeling a very slight force from that space probe. And so you can use this gravity effect to pull the asteroid very slowly. And this is called the gravity tractor. It's beautiful. You have a spacecraft and it orbits in this halo orbit out here, applying its engines and very slowly pulling the asteroid off. It takes a long time, but it's totally gentle. You don't need to touch the asteroid and you don't need to develop the technology to lock into it. But on the other end of the scale, if you have something bigger, something that a conventional impact can't change the orbit of, well, some people have suggested nuclear explosions, because nuclear explosions, well, nuclear bombs basically put a lot of energy into a very, very small and light package. And mass and size are very heavy constraints when you're flying a spacecraft, billions of miles in space. So with a nuclear bomb, sure, you could actually blow an asteroid up completely, like in the movie Armageddon, or you could change its course, like in Deep Impact. But equally, you might not want to actually land a bomb on the surface. You might just want to move a weapon very close to the surface and then detonate it. And then what happens is one side gets bathed in intense, nuclear fireball heat. And as that happens, it boils off the surface and that shoots off into space and pushes the asteroid in the other direction. So that's an asteroid deflection via a nuclear explosion. Again, that one is a little more energetic. And so if your asteroid doesn't have enough self-gravity, then it could perhaps disrupt the asteroid too much and then break it up. So there's many different possibilities. If you ask scientists for ways to deflect asteroids, they will have many other ideas. Another idea that's very simple in concept is if it's rotating, you might just paint it and change its color, and the reflectivity, the emissivity of thermal radiation, that will slowly change its orbit over time. You could use solar cells, you can use mass accelerators, mass drivers, which take debris and throw it off into space. The thing about asteroid deflection is it's not that we lack ideas, it's that we don't know which is the right one, and we may not know which is the perfect one for a specific asteroid until the scenario is thrust upon us.
What does an asteroid impact look like? We can look at the moon through our binoculars and see impact craters with our very own eyes, but we didn't get to see them happen. And interplanetary missions send back images of impact craters from other planets, other moons, and even from asteroids. But again, we don't get to see the process of impact cratering. So from the craters, we don't really know what it looks like. Now, Earth, our own planet, is scarred by impact craters, and geologists have studied them in detail and tried to infer what an impact would be like. So we know for a fact that asteroid impacts happen, but they're very rare. They're very few and far between. They happen so rarely that we haven't had a big impact cratering event on Earth since humans evolved. So humans have never actually seen one of these things happen. But because the Earth's surface is so old and the moon's surface is so old, we have a record of those impact craters, and we can use supercomputers to model them. So it's really supercomputer modeling and the science of the understanding of the cratering process, and even artist rendering that help us really have an understanding of what an asteroid impact looks like. Now, there's a whole range in sizes of asteroid impacts. At one extreme, the big extreme, is the one we all know about, the dinosaur killer impact. And that happened 66 million years ago in Mexico. It was probably at least 10 kilometers in diameter. It came screaming in through the atmosphere, took maybe 2 seconds, a few seconds at most, to traverse the entire atmosphere, hit the ground, penetrate the ground, and explode. And it created a crater that's 150 kilometers in diameter. That's as big as the big island of Hawaii. The other extremes are smaller airbursts. The best example of that is the Tunguska event, the explosion over Siberia in 1908. It was actually on June 30th, which is why that's when Asteroid Day is. We put Asteroid Day on the anniversary of that event. And that did have eyewitnesses. Was really spectacular. It created a huge boom. It knocked down trees over an area spanning 2,000 square kilometers. The heat, the radiative heat from that event caught trees on fire. It charred the wood. So it was a very dangerous and big event. We think it was about 50 meters in diameter. The magnitude was maybe 5 megatons. So it was an enormous explosion, but very small on the scale of asteroid impacts. Now, the best witnessed asteroid airburst was the one also over Siberia, over the city of Chelyabinsk. And that was probably about 1/10 as big in terms of mass and energy as the Tunguska event. That came through the atmosphere more or less sideways. It came at a very shallow angle, and there was an enormous explosion. It blew out windows all over the city. It injured over 1,000 people, and it was very frightening for everyone. But we don't have to just depend on the accounts of eyewitnesses because we have lots of video. A lot of people had these dashboard cameras in their cars, and we have many, many videos. They were starting to upload videos within a day of that event. So we really know what that looked like. And it matches our models very closely, which gives us a lot of confidence that we know what we're doing with the models. And artists have also depicted that. So fortunately, we're not likely to get hit by a big asteroid. We track them very well. We've discovered most of the big ones, but there's lots and lots of the small ones. And those are the ones we need to worry about the most. Those are the most likely. So what I hope is that we, with all our new telescopes, you know, the infrared space telescope that's going to come online, the Vera Rubin telescope, the LSST, with all of those telescopes, we will discover a smallish asteroid, one like the one that exploded over Chelyabinsk. Those hit the Earth, we think, roughly once every 50 years. We'll discover one on the way, and it'll be ready to come in over a very remote place. And we can actually send scientists and hopefully photographers and artists and watch that come in, and it will explode, and it'll be the most well-documented asteroid impact ever. And then we'll know what an asteroid impact really looks like.
Hello, my name is Mark Sares, and I'm the CEO of the Luxembourg Space Agency, sending you a warm welcome to Asteroid Day's 2021 live event. We at the Luxembourg Space Agency are looking to the future of the space industry. In Luxembourg, space entrepreneurs and companies with strong commercial ideas have the opportunities to be part of a booming space community. They can draw on a full range of support from finance to premises, to research resources or collaborative international network to develop, grow, and play their part in bringing forward the new space industry. Luxembourg also established a range of programs and partnerships with the academic, research, and business communities to attract the attention of students and foster the development of the expertise and skills required by the space sector. One of our missions is to develop the Luxembourg space ecosystem by creating synergies with businesses and organizations outside the space sector. In that framework, we are proud to say we have been supporting Asteroid Day since their first come to Luxembourg in 2017. Space resources and asteroid resources utilization will drive the future of space exploration. Asteroid Day plays a key role in spreading awareness on this topic across the globe. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon in Luxembourg.
I'm here again with Andy Chang, and we heard earlier from him about the characterization of asteroids and what the NEAR-Shoemaker mission found when it arrived at Eros and when it landed on the surface. And what's interesting now is how understanding the nature of asteroids is allowing us to plan for maybe deflecting those asteroids if we were to ever find one that was a hazard to Earth. Now, for all of those just tuning in, Andy Chang, who's with me now, is the lead investigator for NASA's DART Planetary Defense mission and the former project scientist for the NEAR-Shoemaker mission. So, Andy, planetary defense seems like a relatively new concept, I think, for many of our viewers. This idea that we could deflect an asteroid that could be on a collision course with Earth. When you were first part of the NEAR mission all those years ago, what, if any, thoughts did you have about the need for defending Earth from asteroids?
Yes, we were very... It turns out that the beginnings of the NEAR mission in the early 90s was also the time that the asteroid impact hazard first emerged into the consciousness of not just the public, but also really more the scientific community. Although asteroid researchers specialize, the very small community, they have been aware of the asteroid impact hazard for much longer than that, because the evidence, as you mentioned earlier, is very clear. All we need to do is look at the moon. You see the man in the moon, you see all the scars on its surface. Those are all the asteroids that hit the moon from the beginning of its history, continuing now to the present. So we know there is a hazard, and as you said also, it will happen. The asteroids continue to hit the Earth, but we don't know when the next impact would be. And this threat was first beginning to be more widely appreciated outside just the specialized science community in the early 90s. So that was also the time when the NEAR mission developed, the first the dedicated asteroid exploration mission, corresponded also to an increase in the interest in exploring asteroids, and then the realization that, oh, this is also a significant natural hazard, and it's unique in that we can maybe actually prevent the next large asteroid impact on Earth. So all that started, and then subsequently we had the George E. Brown Act. We had Congress actually tasking NASA to discover. That's the first step. Find them, find the ones that are out there that are large enough and in threatening orbits, find all these guys, and then also more recently since then, let's figure out what we can do to save ourselves, how to prevent and deal with this threat, how to mitigate this threat. So that's what DART is. It's the first asteroid mitigation mission. It's a demonstration of how to change the orbit of an asteroid. And the idea is to do it by a kinetic impactor, which means your spacecraft runs into the asteroid and changes its orbit, just pushes it out of the way.
And how have our ideas about planetary defense changed in those 25 years from that first sort of recognition of the issue to now on the cusp of actually testing a mission with DART?
Well, in the early days, there was still something we called the giggle factor. People didn't take it seriously. Are you, they didn't understand. Is this real? Is this for real? Now I think we have progressed to the point people understand, yes, it's for real. And so, yeah, as you say, we're on the cusp of actually launching the DART mission, actually launching next November. We'll go out and show that we can do this. We can actually change the orbit of an asteroid.
Mm. What is the effects you think are going to happen when you actually hit the moon of Didymos? Just talk me through. Imagine, that you were there actually watching this impact take place. Give me your imaginations.
We will actually have an Italian CubeSat that DART is carrying and that will release before DART actually gets to the asteroid. And that CubeSat will be watching with its cameras as DART hits. So hopefully that we will actually be able to see a big splash, flash of light, plume of material coming off. Okay. And of course, telescopes on Earth are watching as well. And what they're going to be watching is they cannot, from Earth is so far away, these bodies are so tiny that it's just a single point of light. But from Earth, what you see, if you're the Earth, you see there's two bodies. It's a binary system. You see them pass in front of each other. And as they pass in front of each other, they block light from each other. Also, they block light from the sun. And so what you see is complicated dips in the brightness of the two bodies combined, caused by this orbital motion. And from that, you can measure how fast they go around each other. And that's what we're going to change. When DART hits the moon, it changes the orbit period. And so
how much do you think you're going to change it by? How much do you think you're going to change
10 minutes. The orbit period now is 11.9 hours. We're changing it by, we don't know how much exactly, we think about 10 minutes. And that's actually one of the most important measurements that DART will make. We measure how much it changed. Because someday that may be very important, because what you want, if you have an asteroid coming toward the Earth, you want to change the orbit enough to make it miss and not put it into another dangerous orbit where it might still hit the Earth. So we have to make sure we get the right amount of deflection. So we want to measure how much deflection we cause by hitting the asteroid.
Absolutely. Well, we are all wishing you the very best of luck with that mission. We are all eagerly watching it, and I'm sure that we will invite you back as well so that we can hear what actually happened. Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
NEAR-CC stands for NEO Coordination Center. NEO is the acronym for Near Earth Object. It's been funded about 8 years ago in 2013, and it's part of a section in ESA, which is the Planetary Defense Office. And our main purpose is to monitor the threat from NEOs and catalog them and monitor them. Currently, we are 15 people working all around Europe. The main center is this one in Esrin, in his establishment in Italy, close to Rome, where we are 8 people. So potential hazard asteroid is any asteroid which is bigger than 150 meters in size, and whose orbit is passing 20 lunar distances or less from the Earth one. Only few of them have a chance of impacting the Earth in the next 100 years. And whenever this is the case, this object enters our risk page. Depending on how much time we have before the impact, we can react in various ways. If the object is small and we have very little time, like only a few hours, then the only solution is to advise the population to evacuate the area and things like that. If the impact threat is a bit more in the future, like some years, then we are studying right now solutions that foreseen impacting a satellite against the asteroid, so in order to deviate its orbit and then avoid the impact. We have various plans. The first one and the most imminent one is the deployment of the Fly-Eye telescope. This will be the first European telescope fully dedicated to discovery of new NEOs. Nowadays, there are mainly 3 programs that are discovering new NEOs, and they are all US funded. And so we hope that by 2023 we also have our facility that will be mounted in Sicily and that will start operating.
Welcome to Asteroid Day 2021. We are reaching out to the global community that follows Asteroid Day since many years. We're very happy again to be part of the Asteroid Day community. I'm Marco Fuchs, I'm the CEO of OHB, and since many years we support Asteroid Day, and we're very excited to do it again this year. Unfortunately, this year again, Asteroid Day will be only a virtual event. Of course, we're all waiting to be again in personal meeting situations. Of course, we'd like to come back to Luxembourg to meet again and to have also social contacts. But we're very happy that this year again the community celebrates Asteroid Day and works together again. OHB is very much involved in asteroid protection. Of course, the big flagship program is the Hera mission. Europe and the United States together are working on this, and we, OHB, are the prime contractor for the European part. This is a very exciting project. It's now full running at full speed, and of course we have to make sure that we're not missing the opportunity, the launch window, because the asteroid is not waiting for us. So we're hurrying up to follow our American friends that will have their launch later this year. OHB since many years is focusing on useful space missions that protect Earth, space missions that enlarge knowledge. And of course, asteroid deflection is a very, very important mission in this regard. So yes, we are trying to be useful, we're trying to protect Earth, or we're trying to at least contribute to the understanding of potential threats. And this is why Asteroid Day 2021 is an important milestone. It's the big event for the asteroid community this year. We're happy to be part of that. We're happy to sponsor it again. And of course, we all want to meet again up in 2022 then, here in Europe, hopefully in Luxembourg. And in this regard, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for being part of the community. We're very proud of Asteroid Day.
Not all asteroids live inside the asteroid belt. NASA and ESA list more than 26,000 that are classified as near-Earth objects. They come close to the orbit of our own planet. Of these 26,000, 2,000 at least, more like 2,100, are classified as potentially hazardous objects because they pose a threat to a collision with our world. Now, collisions with our planet have occurred in the past. We see their scars all over Earth from space. We've seen asteroids striking the planet in the last couple of decades, and we're bound to be hit in the future by a hazardous asteroid. Now, if we let that happen, we deserve the catastrophe that could result. We're going to discuss in this panel how we can use technology to stop a future asteroid strike and talk about the missions that are testing those technologies today. So I'm Tom Jones, a former NASA astronaut. I'm a planetary scientist and author, and I'm joined today by 4 great panelists. I've got Elena Adams, who's the DART mission systems engineer at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. I've got my fellow planetary scientist, Andy Chang, with me, the DART investigation team co-investigator lead, and he's also from the Applied Physics Lab. Ian Carnelli is the Hera project manager for the European Space Agency, and Pedro Duque is my astronaut colleague and an ESA astronaut, now Spain's Science and Innovation Minister. So I'm going to go right into our conversation with Lena Adams from the Applied Physics Lab. She's managing the DART spacecraft, which is designed to collide with the asteroid Didymos and its little circling moon next year. It's a test of a planetary defense technology called kinetic impact. So I'd like Lena to tell us more about the status of DART, give us the general overview of the mission, and tell us about what it's going to do when it arrives at this asteroid binary system.
So I'm Lena Adams. I work at the Applied Physics Lab. And here we're building the DART spacecraft and the DART mission that's going to be launching later on this year in November. We've been working on this mission for quite a few years at this point, about 6 years now. And we are getting ready for the final moments where we're actually going to launch on a Falcon 9 rocket later on from the Vandenberg Air Force Base this year. So it takes us about 9 to 10 months to get to the Didymos system. So Didymos is the main asteroid, which is about 780 meters big. And as Tom mentioned, there's a small moon called Dimorphos that orbits around it. It's about 160 to 170 meter in diameter. And our goal as the kinetic impactor is to hit that moon and see if we can change its orbital period around Didymos moon by about 10 minutes. Well, our requirement only says 73 seconds, but we're definitely going to make a bigger impact. So the mission over the last year has been in integration and testing, which means that we took all of our instrument and all of the different payload aspects, so like a little CubeSat from the Italian Space Agency, and we're integrated onto the spacecraft together with all of the different electronic boxes that will actually make this mission work, including our solar panels and our Next-C thruster. And so at this point, we have gone through some of the environmental testing, which means that we've already gone through the thermal testing, and we're on our way to get to the structural testing, which means we're going to vibe the spacecraft, kind of the experience it's going to get as it's launching on the rocket. So next year is going to be very exciting for us. We actually don't know what Dimorphos looks like, and we're not going to see it until about an hour out. About 30 days out, we finally see Didymos, which is the bigger asteroid, in our field of view of our camera called Draco. And it's literally a dot. And we follow this, our trajectory to this dot for about 30 days. About 4 hours out, our spacecraft becomes completely autonomous. And at that point, it still hasn't seen Dimorphos, which is the moon we're actually trying to hit. About an hour out, we finally spot Dimorphos as a dot in our field of view, and really until about a minute or 20 seconds out, we don't actually know what it looks like. You know, could be a ball, could be a sphere, could be a weird duck shape. And yeah, and our smart nav, which is the autonomous navigation guidance system, actually slams us into the asteroid. After that, the telescopes on the ground take over. And what they're going to do is they're going to perform some measurements from the ground and see how much we change the period of Dimorphos around Didymos.
Great, Lena, that sounds very exciting. A lot of challenges there to strike this asteroid dead on. Andy, you are one of Lena's colleagues working on the mission. 25 years ago, you were involved with the NEAR-Shoemaker mission, the first spacecraft to land on a near-Earth object. And now you're involved in launching a spacecraft that's going to test this planetary defense technique. Tell us about why you're using this mission to test kinetic impact versus, say, a gravity tractor.
I want to change the orbit of an asteroid to show that we can do that. And you can push on or pull on an asteroid in a number of different ways, as you mentioned. But we have chosen, NASA has chosen, to do the demonstration with a kinetic impactor, which means, like a football player, you just run yourself into your opponent, you smack him hard and push him out of the way. And that technique is, in fact, the most mature. That's why it was selected, because it's most ready and requires the least amount of new technology development in order to do it. And so the DART mission is going to demonstrate the deflection of an asteroid by a kinetic impactor and do so at moderate cost.
So, you know, way back in the 2000s, we struck a comet, Temple 1, with a mission called Deep Impact. And so we created a crater on that comet. In a sense, that was sort of the same thing you're doing with DART. What are the differences and similarities between Deep Impact and now this DART in 2022?
Well, the purpose of the Deep Impact, hitting the comet, the purpose of doing that was, in fact, to dig a big hole so you could see what was inside the comet. We wanted to study the interior of the comet. They also wanted to study the material that was released. The purpose was not to deflect the comet. The comet, in fact, is a much bigger target. It is several kilometers in diameter, as opposed to the size of the DART target, which is 160 meters in diameter. So the comet could not be deflected by any measurable amount. It was not. And that was not the purpose of the mission. As I said, the purpose of the deep impact mission was to dig inside and see what the interior of a comet looked like. But DART, in fact, is to deflect the mission and also to deflect an asteroid and to choose an asteroid to do that demonstration, which is a representative threat asteroid. It is the size of asteroid that is, in fact, most likely to hit the Earth in the not too distant future.
Mm-hmm. So you've got a smaller target, you're coming in at a high velocity.
Yes.
It's a big challenge to make this mission work. And at the end of it, it seems like it's a suicidal mission. It's going to smack into the asteroid and destroy itself. DART will be vaporized by the impact. So how do you get the data back out of this mission?
Well, that is one of the big challenges. Perhaps the biggest challenge, other than just hitting the asteroid in the first place, is to get the data back that we need before we crash into the asteroid. And in fact, the best data we get right at the very end when we're up close. And there's only seconds left before the spacecraft will hit the asteroid. So that is a challenge. And yes, it is a bit sad to be working on the mission that its purpose is to destroy itself. But as Lena mentioned, the challenge of getting ready, of making sure that we do all the tests we have to do to make sure we surface any possibility for something to go wrong, make sure we understand everything that we're seeing in the tests. That excitement is so great that we really don't have much chance or don't really think very much about the fact that, yes, this spacecraft is going to just end itself.
I'm intrigued by this Lycia CubeSat, and maybe it's going to fly in parallel with DART and record the actual impact itself. And along with the ground-based folks, you're going to get some information even after the impact. So why don't you, Andy, go into that for a minute or so? Yes,
well, the CubeSat is carried by DART. It is provided by the Italian Space Agency. So DART is actually international. And as you said, Tom, the CubeSat will be released 10 days before the DART impact, and then it will fly itself to a separate flyby of the Didymos system, and it will take pictures of the impact, of the cloud of ejected particles that are released, and also turn around, and very importantly, it will turn around and image the side of Dimorphos and Didymos that DART cannot see because DART had to hit the front side, can't see the back, but the CubeSat will turn around and see the back.
And we're watching from the Earth while all this occurs, and we're going to get ground-based observations of the impact and the measurement of the change in the period of the little moon so that we can measure the effectiveness of the kinetic impact. But there's
Absolutely.
a follow-up to this that's going to occur with the Hera mission. And we've got Ian Carnelli on board here to talk to us about the Hera mission, which is going to launch later in the 2020s to examine the effects of the DART impact, but do a lot more than that. So tell us about how Hera is going to do its job and how it complements the DART mission itself. Thanks, Ian.
Hello, Tom. Yes, indeed, you're right. Hera will launch in October 24. We are currently what we call in phase C. So we are finishing the subsystem designs of the satellite. And as a matter of fact, the first units of the flight model will come in already next month. We'll start already assembling in the second half of this year and next year, because the schedule is so compressed for Hera that we finished the design, we're already building the satellite. We have almost a dozen instruments with us. We're going to explore the aftermath of the DART impact and like an investigator to try to understand exactly what had happened, get all the properties of Dimorphos, but also Didymos, so that we can reconstruct on our computer models the impact and in fact to help the scientists calibrate their models. So for that, we're going to get a thermal model of the asteroid with a infrared camera provided by the Japanese Space Agency. We're going to take, of course, visual images, hyperspectral images. We're going to deploy 2 CubeSats that are going to take data from a radar, low frequency monostatic radar, so to understand what is the structure of the asteroid deep inside, like a little bit like an X-ray. we're going to finally land on the asteroid, and therefore with the accelerometers, we'll be able to understand what is the coefficient of restitution of the surface. So how elastic is the surface? All of this amount of data will be shared with the whole community around the world so that everybody can benefit from it, and will be giving us great clues about the kinetic impactor technique, and we'll be able to then use the technique to for future asteroids in case we need it.
Well, I just wanted to make the point that it's a rendezvous mission, unlike DART, which is just going to zoom in and collide with Dimorphos. You guys stay in orbit around the asteroid system, get a precise measurement of the deflection that occurred, and then you get into this very detailed and interesting investigation of the two asteroids themselves. So how long will you be in the system? And then remind me of the launch date again, 2024?
Correct. So we're launching October 24. Let's say the rendezvous phase will start in December 26. And then let's say the close proximity operations will start probably around February 27 and last for about 6 to 8 months. So that time frame will be able to gather a great deal of data, of course. To do that, we'll need to be flying in a very strange gravity environment. The gravity is very low. That also allows some interesting features like flying very strange trajectories around the asteroids. For those who have followed Rosetta, it will be something close to that. And we'll be using for the first time in Europe visual-based, autonomous visual-based navigation. So the camera data will be fed into the computer, like autonomous driving cars today will understand where they're flying with respect to the surface and be able to program themselves to understand, how to fire the thrusters and move to the next trajectory by themselves. And that will allow us to fly much closer to the surface and hopefully get very interesting data.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I'm really interested in is the calculation of how effective the DART impact was, and it's a factor called beta. It's the momentum multiplier effect, if you will. So how does Hera tell us about measuring the effectiveness of that impact?
Oh, probably that's a question for Andy. I'm not a scientist, but in practice, what we will do is get a very important parameter in this beta calculation, which is the mass of Dimorphos. Because what DART can do is, of course, to measure it from the volume and assuming as a density. Hera will actually probe it with a gravity field and will fly so close to the asteroid that we can actually feel the little gravity pull of Dimorphos. In addition, we will also be measuring what we call the wobble. So while Dimorphos flies around, orbits around Didymos, it actually pulls it a little bit towards it. So, and this creates a little wobble of Dimorphos around the barycenter of the system. We'll be measuring that. So through that measurement, we will know accurately the mass of Dimorphos, which is a key parameter to understand the beta factor. On top of that, we'll also measure reconstruct the 3D shape of the crater, which will also give us an understanding of the amount of material that has been ejected. So all of this data will provide us a very accurate measurement of beta.
Sounds like a really interesting, 1-2 punch addressing this whole kinetic impact problem. And I like the international flavor of this. The asteroid hazard is a global hazard. It affects all the nations around the planet. So here we've got NASA, the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency involved. It's a great example of this international cooperation that will be needed to meet this challenge in the future. So that is a nice transition over to Pedro, my astronaut colleague in Spain. And this international effort is absolutely fundamental to planetary defense. We can't go it alone. You can't have nations unilaterally picking how we're going to defend the planet. So Pedro has moved from the ESA astronaut ranks and flown on the space shuttle. Now he's the science and innovation minister in Spain. Tell us, Pedro, about the United Nations and how the space agencies of the world are working with the UN to try to address the planetary defense challenge.
Well, hello, everybody, and dear Tom. I'm really glad to be able to be here with you with all the work that we have little by little done from the astronaut association, the Association of Space Explorers, that we have always tried for this, exactly for the world to be aware of this challenge and to put priority on trying to solve it. Certainly, this sounds like something that should be addressed by the United Nations, the threat to everybody, and what to do about it. And well, it has been a continuous work, and I know you personally have gone to the United Nations several times with Rusty Schweikart, for example, and tried to get everybody be aware of that. I just saw a new paper that calls for new action to be done in that. But of course, the development of the hardware that we will need to solve this problem cannot wait at all. So we should be doing this in parallel. And that, of course, we have been, like from my government, let's say, part of the contributors to this Hera mission to see that the ESA adds the European contribution to this hardware development that should help solve this issue. And as we, Tom and I, and Ed Lu and Schweikart, we have always talked, I took the liberty in my position to initiate a program, at least to initiate the studies at ESA for the construction of the real, of one other real interesting and necessary tool that would be a telescope in orbit that would detect the rest of the asteroids that we don't know about. So we have already studied this. We have already started a study at ESA, and in the next ministerial conference, at least there will be one country that will propose this for ESA to build. And I think this is not something that is well, anybody's individual opinion. This is something that we have all gotten convinced that we have to do. And the only problem that we have to surmount, both at NASA, who has the same kind of project that never takes off, and at ESA and probably at other places, is that these kind of missions do not fall under the very old traditional silos of kinds of missions that are built. It's neither science, neither Earth observations. We have to create a new area inside the space agencies, and this will take some work. And I would be really happy if I can contribute to that.
Yeah, good. There's the Space Missions Planning Advisory Group under the United Nations. It's a body that brings the space agencies together to talk about how new technology missions should be conducted internationally. I think DART and Hera are a great first step. You've mentioned the fact that we need an infrared search telescope in space to help us complete the search for hazardous objects that could threaten an entire region, let alone a city. So I think that's a very important next step that NASA has had trouble funding, but I think is moving forward on. And maybe that can be a joint effort between space agencies to put that search telescope into operation. And then, there's the existing network of telescopes and observers around the world, the International Asteroid Warning Network, again, sanctioned by the United Nations to share information about hazardous objects. So ESA has a growing interest in planetary defense, and space safety is the term that you folks use. Do you know anything about the Fly-Eye telescope that Europe is contributing to the observation network?
Well, yes, it is. I just got a 85-page dossier that lists.
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes, Pedro, to read that into the record.
I don't know. But what I mean is that I just got a big dossier about all that ESA is proposing us to do. I will protest that the infrared telescope is not in here yet, so we will put it in the next version. And yes, one of the proposals obviously is creating new technologies for detecting astronauts from Earth, like what you call the Fly-Eye, is starting to become a reality. I am always more inclined for space solutions from space agencies and other people to the telescopes that know better than us. But this is a good collaboration between astronomers and space people, so that we can add to the network. Okay, let's hope because as you said, 26,000 objects, but we think from statistics that there are at least 5 times more. So we need to detect all the rest.
Right. Those are the ones that are in the catalog, and there are a lot more that are unseen and undetected so far. I think only about 25 or 30% of the ones that could wipe out an entire country like Spain have been detected so far. So we have a lot of search work to do from the ground, and it'll go a lot faster if we can get international collaboration to do this in space with an infrared telescope. I think at the NASA version, it's called the NEO Surveyor mission. And that may come along with, again, with international contributions and get the job done in the next 10 years. So I'm looking forward to that. When in the planetary defense world, we've been calling for that follow-on mission, search mission for at least the past 10 years. So it's time that we got that actually implemented in orbit. That's important. Thanks to all the panelists today. They've done a great job of explaining where we're going in just the next 5 years, some exciting developments in planetary defense. It's important to remember that not all of the asteroid impacts that we've watched strike the Earth have been doomsday scenarios. We hope that this is a natural catastrophe that we can prevent through our global and partnerships. And I think it's a great story that here's a natural disaster that's befallen the Earth many times in the past, but we can do something about preventing a future asteroid impact on the Earth with cooperation, with dedication, expertise, and the necessary funding that goes along with it. So I want to thank my panelists for their great contributions this afternoon. I want to thank you for watching, and I'm Tom Jones. Have a great asteroid day. Thanks for joining us on Asteroid Day Live. Bye-bye.
Greetings, Bill Nye here, CEO of the Planetary Society. The 30th of June is Asteroid Day. It's the anniversary of the Tunguska event in Siberia back in 1908. See, we don't want the Earth to get hit with an asteroid. Say what you will about the ancient dinosaurs, but if they had a space program, it wasn't good enough. An asteroid came in and wiped them out. You don't want the same thing to happen here. Now, you might think that asteroid deflection, asteroid detection is government work. It is. Every government in the world should be preparing for an incoming asteroid. But along with that, there's action you can take as an individual. There's at least 3 things you can do. The first thing is let your government know that it's important to you. Speak up. Tell your legislature, your Senate, Congress, your parliament. Let them know that an asteroid impact is something they should be concerned with. Second thing is tell your friends. If we were talking about an asteroid impact the way we talk about a lot of other things, we'd be getting her done. We'd be getting ready. And the third thing is support organizations that work in this field or in this space. I'm the CEO of the Planetary Society. Check us out at planetary.org. We provide grants to amateur astronomers who look for asteroids and track them. Yeah, as the old saying goes, it's like looking for a charcoal briquette in the dark. They're hard to find. And keep in mind that an amateur astronomer is quite different from an amateur sports player, an amateur tennis player. Amateur astronomers contribute a great deal to the science of astronomy, and they contribute a great deal when it comes to tracking these near-Earth objects. Then you can check us out also at asteroidday.org. You can support both organizations so that we mobilize people around the world to be ready for an asteroid. Working together, we can, dare I say it, save the world. No kidding. Thank you.
Psyche is a metallic asteroid that could tell us more about what lies at the center of planets. With an average diameter of 220 kilometers, or 130 miles, Psyche is large enough for its gravitational pull to affect the orbits of other nearby asteroids. Measuring these effects, astronomers discovered that it has a lot of mass for its size, suggesting that it consists mostly of metal. Metallic asteroids are rare, and are thought to have once been part of the metallic core of a forming protoplanet. Instead of growing into maturity like the Earth or Mars, these young worlds are somehow stripped of their outer layers. If this formation scenario is true, Psyche could afford us a glimpse inside a planet, to the exposed metal heart that's usually locked away from view, buried beneath layer upon layer of rock. NASA is sending a mission of the same name to discover the truth about asteroid Psyche. Following a cruise of more than 3.5 years, the Psyche spacecraft will arrive at its namesake in 2026 to begin almost 2 years of scientific investigations. Psyche's cameras will show us close up what this rare planetary body looks like, including what craters look like on metallic bodies. Psyche's other instruments will tell us whether it is indeed the core of a protoplanet. Whatever we learn about asteroid Psyche, it's bound to be fascinating.